We are here today to discuss the union representation, goals, and needs, and we are just waiting for our guest to arrive. Our focus today really is on trying to better understand the organizational structure, how it affects the economic system, and how it is that we can best serve and understand the needs of a variety of unions that exist around the country. And so we have a guest coming on today to discuss these issues. And we're just waiting for him to arrive. I'm going to send him an email real quick. Hey, there we go. All right. Hi, Shane. I'm going to go ahead. Let's go ahead and invite you in. And we are going to be adding him right now. It is connecting. You gotta love technology when it's thinking. All right, Shane, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no problem. This is always a gamble to get started, and this is new technology to me as well, so I'm still learning it all. But I have to say, it records nicely, it captures information quickly, and it makes this experience a whole lot better for all of us.
Awesome. I'm sorry. I was at a coffee clutch with Stephanie Murphy, and I just ran in, and I'm an old guy, so I'm trying to figure out how to get on here. So I'm glad to be here, though.
Good. Well, we're glad to have you. And let me just go ahead and introduce you to everyone. So the way this works is there will be some people that will tune in while we're doing this, but of course it's middle of the day. So it will also record and then be saved. And what we find is we usually get actually hundreds of people that will look at the video afterwards. So it's really nice to be able to archive. And that's why we like doing this. So hopefully you'll enjoy this experience as well and find that now that you're on, that was the hardest part. So let me go ahead and introduce our speaker today, or I should say probably our interviewee is probably a better term since we're not really standing in front of a crowd. But so this is Mr. Shane Ulbin, and I'm going to actually read your bio because it's extensive. You represent a lot of folks.
Thank you.
So he's District 3 Chairman at the Florida State Association of Letter Carriers, the Civic Engagement and PAC Chairman at the Seminole County NAACP Executive Board, works for Working America, another union group and political action committee, and is the food drive coordinator at the NALC branch 1091, and also is a campaigner for the Florida AFL-CIO labor union. So you cover a lot of folks.
Yeah, I try. I'm also on the Labor Advisory Board for Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy and Congressman Darren Soto.
Well, fantastic, because those are the two people that we absolutely need to make sure are always in the loop and understanding, and certainly I know them both. And hopefully then what I'll do is complement their work, right? Because they're in Congress, so they're dealing with how the money is allocated. In the executive branch, that money gets thrown over the fence, and then people like me determine how we actually execute it. And one of the arguments I've been trying to help people understand is that we need to talk to Congress. We also need to talk to our executive branch workers. I don't think people realize, A, how many there are of us, 2.4 million, and B, how many decisions that we make. And as I've come out of that space so that I can speak freely, because of course on the inside we're not allowed to without permission, I often now say I feel like a union rep, because I represent the workers and the words that they have and the experiences that we all know, but there's very few people that are able to speak for us. So I'm hoping you and I will find some common ground today and understand where we're coming from. So I will pause for a minute and let you do an introduction. I'm assuming you have a bit of a spiel that you give folks, and we'd love to come into that space.
Well, like you said, I work for the Florida State Association of Letter Carriers. In my journeys, I have to be nonpartisan, so I'm also for the National Association of Letter Carriers. I'm a congressional liaison for Republican Ted Yoho up in Gainesville, trying to get him on board for different resolutions that represent letter carriers and other federal workers. As you know, with federal workers, we need Congress, and even more than the executive branch, but we need Congress because they pretty much decide at the end of the day our job. And one of our key issues right now is trying to stay off budget. For people that don't understand what that is, if you're on budget, when you have a government shutdown, which you know down the road with the appropriations bill coming up for August here, that may happen again. And if you're on budget, you're going to be working without a paycheck. If you're off budget, you're still going to get paid. So that's the difference there. With the NAACP, I try to work as the civic engagement chairman. We're trying to gear up and get ready to go with our voter registration and drive and to get people out to vote, especially after Amendment 4. So that's how you kind of see it commingles. With the Florida State Association, I'm the District 3 chair, which my District 3 encompasses 4 different congressional districts, and there I'm responsible to make sure that they sign on to our resolutions, to our bills. We got a few new ones out there, and also I'm the guy that gets some money and boots on the ground, so they kind of have to see me, and at least we get an ear. And food drive coordinator, that's my favorite. It takes about 5 months. It takes a lot of my time. I donate all my time. It's the largest food drive in the country. So I'm still doing the numbers. So far this year, we've gotten close to 1.8 million pounds in one day for our area, and all the food stays in the area it was collected. That's another challenge, but we always are successful. So I think I covered it all. I'm not sure.
Wow. Well, I want to start with the food drive because I know that's where your passion lies. And one of the key points that I often make inside of government is I always say, who's doing something great? Because rather than reinventing the wheel, which is commonly what happens, right? Somebody comes in and they say, I have a new idea. I've got this all figured out. I'm going to tell you how to do something different. I tend to be the opposite. Who's already doing a great thing? How do we replicate it? So how did you get involved, and did you help make it the largest, or it just already was because of a variety of reasons?
I don't want to take the credit myself. I had great people working with me in the committee. When I took it over, it was already doing good 5 years ago now. And since then, we've set a record. You know, it's also, I guess, a Guinness record. We had 2.2 million pounds. We might approach that this year. I don't know. Last year, we didn't have the bags that you might have seen in your mailbox, or enough of them. So we only got 1 million pounds. I say only 1 million pounds, but that's a lot. Yeah. But before I took over, it was roughly averaging about 700,000 or whatever. And what we basically did was we reached out, and there was a lot of rural carriers out there and offices out there that wanted to help, that were doing it, that weren't getting credit, weren't getting bags, weren't getting the supplies. So we reached out to them and took them in and started counting. The food wasn't even being counted, you know, so we took them in, got them under our umbrella, got them under our, advertising. That's key, getting the word out. The bags are the biggest advertisement we have. Did a few interviews on TV this year, probably do a lot more next year. I prefer carriers to do it because I always say I have a face for radio, but it does get the people out. And what other drive in the world where we come to you instead of you coming to us? Because it's so big, and the Postal Service, I got to give a shout out to them. Let us use their infrastructure, and I got to coordinate their trucks with Second Harvest, with Farm Share, and Farm Share got us the bags, so that was key. And about 600 volunteers all total. It's a lot, but it's just at the end of the day, when I'm driving around that day trying to put out fires here and there and watching these tractor trailers get full of food, it's unbelievable. And we do it this time of year because it's when the kids are getting out of school. They're losing those 2 free or low-cost meals. This year, the food banks got stretched because of the government shutdown. We might have another one coming. So it was really big this year. People gave big. It started 27 years ago in Arizona when a carrier, we're in the field every day. and our people see what's going on in the community,
Yeah.
and they see who's hurting and who isn't. And it was just a simple idea, why don't we just ask people to give, one can of food? And it just grew from there. And now we do it it's volunteered. They don't have to do it, but we do it in every state. And here in Florida, all 67 counties are involved. So it's awesome.
Wow. So it sounds like advertising, connecting, and it also sounds like giving recognition to the people who are choosing to participate, the letter carriers
Yeah.
that are volunteering. Giving them recognition matters, but it also sounds like getting the supplies out.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. People don't realize that the letter carriers are the eyes and the ears of the community. You don't know how many times they warned of fires. People, I mean, in my case, I had a person that had died, and the family thanked me because nobody visited him for a long time. And if they didn't know, God knows how long. Little things like that. But also the police come to us. We see what's going on. When there's a disaster like a hurricane, I guarantee you we're the first ones you see out there, so people know normalcy's coming back. God forbid there's ever a major cyber attack, and all our communication system comes down. You still have the greatest communication in the world in the Postal Service, so our government will still, and our businesses, be it slower, will still run. We won't come to a crashing end. So there's a lot of things people don't realize. It's not necessary now, but years ago, President Obama signed an executive order that was, again, it was voluntary, that because we're within 100 miles at the time of a nuclear plant, that if that had a leak, we would deliver the medicine, so on and so forth. So yeah, they do a lot out there.
You make some really good points, especially in this infrastructure concept, right? As we look forward into what is an inevitable digital age, we are definitely moving towards that space. But what you point out is that this human element, these human connection points, will always matter, no matter what, because there will be threats, there will be infiltration from time to time. Oftentimes I equate the transition to cyberspace as similar from the horse to the car, because we will have accidents, we will have problems, but at the same time we will have to make that transition because overall it's going to be better. So people are very nervous right now about moving into this digital space, but the letter carriers, you're absolutely right, will be that fabric, that connectivity, that human element that we're going to need, not only regardless, but I think perhaps even more so as we become more separated as a society.
Yes. I mean, we're the eyes and the ears, and also, when and it's coming back again, trying to get 5-day delivery with even our Postmaster General had mentioned it. It was mentioned in our president's task force on postal reform that maybe 5-day delivery was needed again, and it's not. But I mean, we deliver medicine.
Yeah.
And and it's as simple as a lot of people and a lot of congressmen, when I talk to them, get this and realize it. We're the ones that only say that they may say hello to an elderly person.
Yeah.
They're the only human contact that they have a lot. And it makes a difference. It makes a difference in the community. Just like I said, we're the first ones out there in a hurricane. 5-day delivery, and now it's really 7-day delivery, with delivering for Amazon and the parcels and so on and so forth. And when you take into consideration our pre-funding, which is like $5.6 billion a year, and some of the other nonsense that's going on, it's a created crisis. We don't always make money every quarter, but when you do the math, our national president, Fred Rolando, was great with that. He's actually broken it down. You can see that we actually make money, and it's just not true. They're trying to privatize us in the end, is what they want to do. But again, like I said, we were here before the country started. We're part of the Constitution. It takes an act of Congress. We have a lot of friends in Congress, thank God.
Yeah.
But and a lot of us, this is very important too. I know I'm going all over a little bit here, but
no, I'm actually really liking your points here. I'm going to tie them to some of the programs we think about.
A good 20, almost 20% of us are veterans, and a lot of them are even active now. One of my friends that was on my committee is in Bahrain right now. On my food drive committee is in Bahrain as we speak.
Yeah.
So so we're something the veterans could do when they come back, and it affects a lot if they were just to try to, the Postal Service is relied on a lot more than just that first class letter. It's just a lot more involved. We need to expand more, maybe get back into the old days. When I started out as a kid, I actually went to the post office some people made a mistake, maybe bounced a check, maybe forgot this bill or that bill, and for whatever reason they can't get a banking account. Well, why don't we give it to them? I mean, they could pay for their postage dues and everything else with a card. I mean, it's just different ideas that we have out there that you don't have to privatize this. You don't have to go to 5-day delivery, and the American people really don't want it.
Yeah, I mean, so what you're bringing up is many of the non-monetary benefits, right? It is that communication stronghold within the nation. And as we think about readiness, so I come out of military readiness, and always we wanted layers of communication, right? Because if one or two of them go out, you've got to make sure you've got a backup always. And so this becomes the term I like to use, the second responders. You have your first responders, right, who are your trained, paid professionals who go in for disaster relief. But then you almost have these second responders, which are going to be your vets, which are going to be your retirees from first responder type activities, or your folks who are a connected network of communication. And when you bring that together and you actually organize that a bit, there is this non-monetary, or at least at the surface, non-monetary benefit. In the long term, there would be a clear monetary benefit because you will have problems that occur, but you'll be better prepared to handle them.
Right.
Yeah. No, I really like that. One of the questions I have, just kind of thinking outside the box, is, how some of those responses could be formalized and shared so that Congress does. I mean, I'm assuming you're already doing some of this, formalizing that so that Congress continues to fund. But I was actually thinking of some of the activities we have in the executive branch where a lot of people don't understand what government does. Like, I understood what you meant by being on budget and off budget. Most people don't understand what that means, or how important that is to the livelihood of the people who are relying on these paychecks. And so, using that communication connectivity and being able to share information with people from the top to the local level is really, really important. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about the budget piece for those who don't understand. Yeah.
I agree with you that it is very important, and unfortunately in the current administration, it's not there. People don't realize, and just one more point with the Postal Service, we haven't taken 1 cent since the Postal Reorganization Act of taxpayer money, and they understand taxes, since 1970. So we're very self-sufficient. We're there for the people, and we are the people. And we have two communities, the one we go home to and the one we work in. So we get it. We know what's going on in America. We get their pulse. A good example of trying to communicate is, like I said, I am on the advisory boards of Darren Soto and Stephanie Murphy. I just talked to her earlier. She's putting a piece in an appropriation bill to help try to push along getting new vehicles, because we've actually had carriers in the past couple of years pass away because of the heat. These vehicles are so old, they're catching on fire.
Oh my God.
Carriers are, oh yeah, it's horrible out there. So those vehicles get to be like 116 inside. There's only a fan. So that type of communication works. And through that, to our political fund and people like me, that's what I do. We get out there and we push it. But another example is more grassroots here in Florida, through the Florida State Association of Letter Carriers. We actually wrote, it took 4 years, but we got passed, vote by mail. It used to be called absentee ballot.
Yes.
We changed it to vote by mail, a simple thing. 1.4 million people voted during the presidential candidate election, but for some reason during the gubernatorial, there was some hiccups. We're now working with Geraldine Thompson and Linda Stewart with some ideas that we got to try to change that. Some simple ideas, like instead of putting your last 4 numbers of your social, because people are afraid of Social Security, maybe making it a PIN, making it optional that you could add it to your signature. Because I worked the recounts, and the way they did it was just 3 people on that committee, on that council, and when you challenge one, they hold it up, and the 3 of them look. They pass it around and look at the signature, and if it doesn't match, then they'll think it doesn't match, and they say no. But if you had a number with it, a PIN, we could pull that up on the data, and if the name matches the signature, it doesn't matter. Because my signature, I'm 62, and I always had bad writing. My signature is different from the morning to the afternoon, and I'm serious. So, that's something we need to do, and it's simple. But communication is key, getting a little bit out of the area of just the letter carriers. At the beginning of the year, you might have seen or the beginning of this term, you might have seen President Trump standing there with IUPAT, which is the painters union and buildings trades union, standing behind them and kind of in support. And the reason they were doing that was he was supposed to help funding to apprenticeship programs.
Yeah.
There's a lot of apprenticeship programs out there, and I know here in Orlando with the electrical workers, with the laborers, and with the painters that go unfilled. And once you get certified in these areas, you're making between $25 to $50 an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And the people can't, they're working now putting food on the table, so they can't afford, all these people could pay these unions maybe minimum wage while they're learning, because they're going through school and they're teaching them and getting them certified. They need to supplement that. It's an easy fix. If you were supplement those apprentice programs, you know, he keeps saying he's worried about skilled workers. You got them right here. Just help them out a little bit. Help those families. You know, I don't know if that helps answer your question, or if you meant it to go to a different direction.
So that, yeah, I'll quickly give the on budget, off budget. It has to do with cycling.
Oh.
And so what a lot of people don't realize is that if you set up your contracts before we go into a government shutdown, you coast through okay. But if you're reliant on them during the time of the shutdown, then you're working without a paycheck. And a lot of people don't understand. Us in the executive branch spend a lot of energy making sure those contracts are done ahead of time so that we can avoid those. But to your second point on apprenticeships, so we actually started working on this in the Pentagon, because what we found was under Department of Ed, my appropriate answer that I use is that the Department of Education right now is focused on the business aspects of education. But in the Pentagon, we need our military personnel, or our individuals who are about to become military personnel, to be fully ready to learn advanced training. And when they cycle out of military service, they need to have all that they learned recognized, and also be able to connect that information to the trades specifically, and also to other higher ed spaces. And so what we started noticing was that under military dollars, we could actually affect some of what you were discussing, where we were struggling in some of the other departments to affect that under this administration. The business focus under this administration has some benefits, but it also has some significant challenges in that it gets to bottom line without thinking about those long-term solutions, if I were to kind of summarize the business differential. But those apprenticeships, there is a lot of money on the inside that we can use. And I do think Defense and Department of Veteran Affairs is a great place to access it. I hope in the future administration, also Department of Ed and Department of Labor can be involved. But both of those two departments have been less involved under this administration than in the past. What they're working on in the Pentagon, I don't know if you're aware, they're working on creating a what they're calling a portal, and working with the US Chamber of Commerce Foundation. And so that people are coming out of service ready to find and match those jobs immediately. And then also be able to say, you have 60% of these skills, you need 40% more. Here's where you get that training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't totally aware of that, but that's such a good idea. I mean, it kind of correlates in with what I've been saying.
Yep.
And this is why I, you know, with the NAACP, they have a wonderful, wonderful get out the vote machine. And I kind of use that in conjunction with what I do. Sometimes when I got a union rally going on or a picnic, I'll bring them in to register people to vote, and so on and so forth, just to try to get it all together. But like, this is what we're talking about. I can bring that information now back when I sit on these labor advisory boards for the Congress people. There's people there from the building trades. There's people, there's a representative there from all these unions I'm talking about, and other federal unions. And yeah, I mean, this is great. That's a good way to go forward.
Yeah, and what we were able to do was use those the Pentagon dollars to make it lifelong. So it's starting with at birth and going through age 75, and ensuring that we are tracking individuals so they can keep coming into these trade organizations. The AFL-CIO at the national level is also involved in helping to better track. Basically what they're trying to say, the punchline is, we focus right now only on formal education, and we do it by time. Meaning, if you sat in an algebra class for an entire year for an hour a day, you get credit for having done for knowing algebra, and you get an A, B, C, or D. However, your stay-at-home mom who has 3 children by experience has learned a lot of things. We don't give any credit for that because it's not in a formal education space. Your 19-year-old who's been working with a neighbor down the street who has learned how to rebuild cars has a ton of mechanical experience,
Right.
but doesn't get any credit for it. So the question started to become, how do we label all those life experiences and with that credit be able to better match them to the trades, but even also to jobs of other types, so that everybody is recognizing what you learn in any setting that you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. And we need more of that. And this president, like I said in the beginning, promised it and then kind of walked away from it. And you know, we have a bill out there right now. I don't have the number in front of me, but there's one out there now to help stop the pre-funding. So that's another job that I do, to go out there to. I think I mentioned pre-funding before. Like I said, we pay 5.6 billion a year. The Postal Service does,
Yes.
into the pension plan and retirement. There's enough in that plan now for people that aren't even born yet that's going to work for the Postal Service. And you know that money should be coming back into the budget. That's what I meant when I said if you ever just check out Fred Rolando, and he has a good mathematical equation there, including that we're not really losing money. And that's the manufactured crisis is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They're still trying to take that pre-funding. I know the Postal Service in the past couple of years hasn't made the payment, but it doesn't matter. As you know, working in the Pentagon, if it's in the budget, it's still in the budget.
Yes.
You know, so it's still in their budget every year when they figure it out. When they come out with those numbers, that's still figured in. So it's just trickery, and it's a shame. The Postal Service should be expanding, in my opinion. Like I said, you know, going into things like banking and other services, expanding passports. I mean, why not even at the state level help out with getting driver license and stuff like that? I mean, anything. I mean, there's just so many things that you can combine. You were talking about cross references and combining things under one roof. There's so many things that's already built right there that you could do right there. And Benjamin Franklin knew what he was doing when he built us.
I love your thinking. That is just so spot on where my head was going. Was how do we create the conduit to all these other programs that are already happening or that are causing us challenges, and use the infrastructure we already have available. Because yes, you need a digital structure, but you also need that human structure. I'm curious. So there's a perception, right or wrong, that much of working class America is very much being benefited and supported by this administration because they have a worker focus and they have a business focus. From a union leadership perspective, and completely recognizing nonpartisan, that's why I'm just referring to it as the administration and not getting into the other political sides of it. What are you all seeing? Is there an agreement, and I mean perceptually, or are people frustrated? They feel like they've had promises that haven't been kept.
People are frustrated. I always like, to me, the economy is good for me. Why? Because I have a 401k that's tied to the stock market.
Right.
Most people don't, so I benefit from that. So like when you said you kind of hit it when you said from business to worker, there's a big gap there. It's huge. It's huge. I call this the beginning of the second Gilded Age, and we all know what happened at the end of the first Gilded Age, the Depression. So we got to be really careful here. And yeah, the numbers are good, but people are working two jobs. Worse, because they attacked the ACA, which people don't understand when we're talking about Obamacare. Since they attacked that, people are losing a lot of their benefits, their health care. They don't have rights to a pension. People tell them, well, start a 401k. Well, how do I do that if I don't have enough money, if I got to pay for my health care? I mean, going back to the food drive, it has a trickle down effect here in Orlando because there's a lot of families when their kids are getting out of school and they don't have those meals anymore. They got to make a decision. Do I buy this medicine or do I put food on the table? This helps make that decision a little bit easier, I pray. You know, so there's a big gap there. There's a big gap in reality there between what's really going on to the working class and what's happening at the business class. I think I just seen, I read in the paper the other day, Darden, a CEO, is now making 800 times more than a worker. 800 times more. I mean, I know that's not the average, but that's 800 times more than a worker. I don't know if you remember, you know, I'm a history buff, and I just remember Forbes, you know, when they got on him saying, why do you pay your employees so much? Because he said, I want them to buy what I make. It's simple. It's that simple. It really is. Do you need an 800% profit? You know what I mean?
You're a
You got to give that
systems
money back into
thinker.
the company.
Not everyone is a systems thinker, right? So
Yeah.
what you're recognizing is that there's short-term gain in getting that large paycheck personally in the moment. There is long-term gain when you share it and people buy your product, thereby also advertising your product, thereby having
Yeah.
more pride in their work, thereby creating this working system that
Yeah.
makes much more sense. Yeah. Yeah. So oh man, you and I could go for a while because I really
Yeah.
enjoy your thinking.
Thank
But I'll
you.
close out with this last question, and I give credit to the individual that sent it, but it was already on my mind. There are folks that are 100% pro-union, and there are folks that say unions are challenged by the same, I would argue that what they mean to say is the same human corruption that can occur in any system. It's not unique to unions, but that as individuals climb to the top, you have folks who are focused on power versus necessarily doing good work for the individuals. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit towards that, and also if you have it, specific data, because my perception is that if you don't, there's always a bigger voice when there's a number of people that come together. But I do recognize that there's also this challenge of human nature. So anyway, I'll pass that to you.
Okay, I apologize. I don't have specific data with me, and I should have because you did give me the heads up. But on that
That's okay. I'm
question,
just a data girl, so I like when someone
yeah,
gives me
yeah.
an argument to say, actually, as much as I understand that perception, here's the reality.
The bottom reality is people that work for unions do better than people that don't. That's just plain and simple. Well, when I first came down here, because of an incident that happened at a Republican Party headquarters, and it was an innocent incident, we were called thugs, and we're not thugs. We're far from thugs. There are no thugs. What the union does, and like I told you, I just left Stephanie Murphy, Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy. What we do when we're there speaking, we're not just speaking for ourselves. I'm not just
Right.
speaking for letter carriers. I know I'm the voice now for working people, and everybody like me is. And when we're talking about we have families. Our families are affected by education in the state that, or we're affected by everything that you are affected by.
Yep.
So when we pass a law or we get something done, it affects you too. And as far as corruption goes, I think that kind of came to an end back when George Meany took over the AFL-CIO. Um, and especially now because of the attacks on unions. I mean, here in Florida, it's so hard to try to go in and get people to vote for a union. And a lot of people that I know they know who I am. They want to be part of a union, but they make it so difficult. They make it hard. And then they put, I mean, we're only allowed to do full 8 hours at a time, for example, here in Florida. I mean, for the whole campaign to try to get somebody to join. Meanwhile, we just had it happen here up in Ocala with different situation, not letter carriers. And but meanwhile, they have their workers 8 hours a day, 8 hours a day, and workers that have been paying $11 an hour that are working in the heat building ambulances, for example, because it's not air conditioned. They turn around and they threaten them. They threaten them. They say, well, we might not be able to afford this, we might not be able to afford you. We'll give you $12 an hour or $12.50. Little tactics like that, and it's constant every day. Where we're only allowed, a lot of times not even on the property. You're only allowed a certain amount of time to approach them, and yeah, and I'm saying that there at that level, but even at the higher level, I'm a trustee. I have to go audit our books, and so on and so forth. If something is wrong, I'm one of the guys you're going to see on TV in handcuffs. When they're questioning, and trust me, they're always looking.
I
There's no
know. That's my
room
number
for
one rule: stay
corruption.
out of jail. If you work for the executive branch in the government at the level I did, it is exactly like
Yeah,
you. That was our
so
number one rule: stay out of jail.
Yeah, so
You watch
you know.
much more carefully than people give us credit.
Right. So my what I say to them is, hey, you came at us so much, you're trying to get rid of us so much that you made it impossible for corruption to even slip through any crack. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's no corruption in unions anymore. There was a time, of course. I mean, everybody remembers Jimmy Hoffa and the
Yeah.
stories with all that and so on and so forth. But like I said, once Meany took over, a lot of that started changing, a lot more accountability. And then, of course, Kennedy, I mean, people remember back then, he was big on ringing in the unions. You know, and unions are the best thing in the world. I'm sorry. I love my union. I love my union, and I tell everybody, if you don't mind a quick pitch right now, please get on the phone, call your wherever you're at, call your congresswoman or congressman, tell them save the Postal Service. We're not losing money. It's a bunch of BS. Stop pre-funding. If you just say stop pre-funding, they'll know what you're talking about. If you call them.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, I think one of the creative ways to handle a lot of these is to bring people to the table and have those discussions, and it's something I spent some significant time on the inside working on, because I perceived exactly what you're describing. We have resources that are untapped, and so then it becomes, do we let go of whatever it is. Postal Service is going to be one, but there are many, many, many others. And what I started to realize was, no, we just need to evolve how we use them and how we view them, just like the country evolves, right? So it makes sense to do that versus cutting entire programs and then letting everybody go. It makes much more sense to, over time, think forward and understand how can we continue what we're doing and elevate or evolve it forward. I can honestly say there are a lot of people that are thinking this way, but we run into a major problem that I'm so glad you don't run into, and that it is that we are not allowed to have anyone speak for us. And so, you know, people ask me, why are you going around the country and speaking? Why are you trying to run for president when no one knows your name? And I finally just said, you know what? I spent all this time, I'm actually almost going to get emotional. I spent all this time on the inside listening to everybody be told no over and over and over again. And there is nobody who is legally allowed to speak for all these millions of workers, and especially out of DOD. We are there to make sure that the warfighter is safe, ready, capable, has all the equipment that they need. And yet a lot of people don't realize things like we still don't have internet access in most of our schoolhouses. We've been trying since 2000. I sat in a meeting. These are the directors of all the services in this area, and I'm going to go with almost 8 hours. We took a break for lunch, I think, but we usually have working lunches. So roughly a full 8 hours talking about all the technical concerns about having internet access at our military schoolhouses. And at the end of the day, most everyone in the room is technical, and they were like, there's absolutely no technical and no security reason that we shouldn't have this. And we realized it was a human issue. And I said, who knew the psychologist was going to be the most important one in the room at the end of the day? But it meant somebody had to get out and be a voice and to help people understand the importance of these things, get somebody to legally say yes. And we don't have those voices. And so we end up with an American population who's angry at government, but also doesn't know the majority of the government. Just like you are hearing these misperceptions, it's, you know, the workers are all doing the best they can. We're all working for 75 cents on the dollar. We all love this country, want to do great things. How do we combine those voices to make them?
JJ, the government's there for them. We are, like I said, we are the people. The government's there for them. We work for them. We always work for them. And my hats go off to everybody in the federal government and the letter carriers and everybody on down that I ever worked with. They're the most honest, hardworking people I know. And you know, people don't realize, just like when you get into the military, just like the president, when we're hired, we raise our hand and take that same oath.
That's
the oath of office and the Constitution. And we do. I mean, these people are awesome. Letter carriers and everybody across the board in the federal government is awesome. And people really, it's a shame that I don't know if establishment is the right word, but right in this case, the executive branch is trying to privatize, trying to beat us down like we're not needed. And like I said, we haven't taken the taxpayer dime in how long, and talk to anybody on the street and say if they have anything bad to say really about their letter carrier, and no, they don't. You know,
I think you nailed it. That's exactly. So. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. These are tremendous workers, and we need to lift everybody up and make sure that we keep A, the funding going, but B, also make sure that we're utilizing all of the resources that we have and use them wisely. That's how we work together as a country.
And this country at the executive level, I would say to you, is we need to invest heavily in education. Yes. Education is a big problem. I mean, you should make college the the 13th and 14th grade and make them STEM classes, and you solve a lot of problems.
Yeah, I will send you a copy of the book. So we actually created a blueprint for a national education strategy. That was
Okay.
my last, yeah, that was my last release. And I was very particular. I said, I do not want to write a theoretical book. I do not want a bunch of researchers to talk about their personal research. I do not want a bunch of argumentation. I want all the leaders in the country who deal in education to come to the table and make an actual blueprint for how we fix this. And that is what we were actually able to do. My boss at the Pentagon, I came out of force education and training. He said, I never knew we could make plans like this. I said, sir, you just have to connect all the dots. The resources already exist in this nation, but they need to be connected. And education, to me, I'm in such agreement, is the foundation of everything. You can't fix the environment unless people understand it. You can't fix healthcare unless people are informed. You can't support the military unless they have all the education and training they need to be ready, and so on and so forth. So yeah, if we're going to beat automation, we're going to have to make sure that our citizens are ready for the future, because it's coming.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And unless there's a robot that can walk up to the house and knock on the door and get you to sign something, I just ask you, I'll give your letter carrier a hug today.
I will do so. Thank you so very much. It was a pleasure to talk with you. And I hope we continue to connect, because I genuinely love your ideas.
Thank you so much. And, let me know whatever it is I could try to do.
Will do. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Bye-bye.